So if you're already out shopping for a house, or maybe you haven't started yet, but you plan to in the future, this video is going to be for you because how you make an offer on a property really matters. So we're going to unpack the 10 ways that we know, based off of years of experience, that you can win your next offer.
What a lot of people don't realize is it doesn't even matter what market you're in. Everybody thinks a competitive market is the only one you have to worry about winning in, and that was the case for a long time where every house was competitive for, I don't know, 2-3 years. It was insane. It's still competitive here where we live, but also it does not matter what market you're in if you find the house of your dreams and it's the hot house, meaning there's more than one person that wants to put an offer in. You're in a competitive situation in maybe a non-competitive market. It doesn't matter.
It could be a complete market that actually favors the buyer, where there's all kinds of homes available. And you could still pick the one that 10 other people want. Happens all the time, and so you need to know these strategies.
So we're gonna say the dumb obvious one, which has to do with price, right? Like there's a price that they list it for, the listing price. Let's say it's $500. If you come in higher, it would seem like you would win, right? That seems like a logical explanation, like just go over the asking price.
So one of the things you're going to want to do with the realtor that you choose is make sure that if the house is priced at $500, that they have an understanding. Is this house priced well? This meaning, is it priced under the market, or is it actually overpriced already? Because if you go into a competitive offer on a house that's already overpriced, you should know that as the homeowner, because that's going to be how much longer you're going to need to own the house to make sure you have equity in it.
So along with price, there is a way to escalate your price. We call it an escalation price here in Washington State. I don't know what state you're in or what they may call it there, but you can escalate your price by a certain amount up to a certain amount. So let's say you're willing to go up to $510, but you only want to spend $2,000 per increment. So you can actually write a contract that says exactly that. So you're only spending as much as you need to, according to the other offer that may or may not have come in from someone else in your competition. So with an escalation clause, it's like overbidding, but not overbidding by too much at one time. So you get to take it in bite-sized chunks and only pay as much as you need to pay to win.
Yeah, so if a house is $500,000 and you say, you know, I'm willing to spend up to $530 on this house, you can do it, what's called an escalation clause. Again, in the state it might be called something different. So you would only be paying up to $530 if another bid comes in at $530, and you get to do, so think of it as eBay, right? Think of it as, I'm willing to do this price, but only if other people are willing to do it. So another great strategy is called an Appraisal Gap Addendum. So this just means that in the event that the home is sold, there's going to be financing on the house, so you're getting a mortgage. In the event that a house appraises low, you would be committing in advance to covering some of the difference of appraisal that comes in less than that amount. So talk to your realtor about that one. It is additional down payment funds to cover a low appraisal. And I can tell you, me being that I'm primarily a listing agent, if there's an offer that comes through and it's actually going to cover some of the difference in a low appraisal, that is an excellent thing for sellers. It is okay for the buyer as well, again, under the condition that you're not overpaying for the house.
So one thing that people do when they're making offers sometimes is ask the seller to pay some of their costs that are involved with their loan. It's a typical thing in a normal market, but if you're in a competitive offer situation and you really want the home, the best advice I can give is if you're able to pay your own fees, pay your own fees. If you're able to pay your own closing costs, pay your own closing costs. That way you're not asking the seller for anything. You're not asking them to do you any favors. And if the other person is who's trying to compete with you, then it makes your offer look better.
Yeah, I mean, if that person's asking for $10,000 to be covered by the seller and you come in and you're not, I mean, that's gonna look better. So the fourth thing that we would recommend doing is making sure that when you get your loan approval, you can fill out an application online and you can get what's called pre-qualified, and then you can give the bank some documentation and you can become pre-approved. But there's a third process that a lot of lenders will allow you to do, which is to have the bank's underwriting system kind of fully executed. And so that means that you are a ready, willing, but more importantly, a super able buyer And that's just taking that effort to make sure that you go through the steps to make sure that you're fully underwritten. Your loan is fully underwritten.
So making sure that you have a lender that understands this process of being fully underwritten before you have a home, because a lot of them will not do it without an address on the house. So getting this process done is something you have to communicate with your lender back and forth, and then also making sure that the agent that you're working with understands that that's important and communicates that to the listing agent who's selling the home. So you definitely have to know how that process works and be able to communicate it clearly in your offer that it's in there.
Yeah, so what you do is you would just work with a lender. You would ask them, hey, do you guys provide fully underwritten loan approvals? And if they do, great. Just do whatever it takes. Give them whatever documentation that's required to make sure that you complete that process. That allows you to write a ultra competitive bid, because what you're telling the seller is that you've already been through all those steps, and now it's just a matter of executing the negotiation and getting in contract.
So another thing you want to make sure your realtor is communicating clearly with the other agent about is all the seller's needs. Those are not necessarily listed out in the advertised listing that we get on the MLS. There may be things the seller really wants and needs that are not like communicated in writing. So asking those questions. So your realtor needs to get on the phone, get on a text message, somehow communicate with the other agent and be like, hey, what is it that your seller would really like to see? One of those things that we talk about all the time is the timing, the closing date, possession, things like that. Things that could make your offer look better because they make it easier on the seller. So if you've got two side by side, everything's the same, but yours closes in the timing that works for them the best, it can make a huge difference for people.
Put yourself in the shoes of the seller. Let's say they're selling the house, but they're not going to be moving out for 6 weeks. And now your realtor comes in and they make an offer, and the offer stipulates that they move out in 4 and not 6. Now what you've done is you've presented an offer that's going to stress the seller out, that they're going to have to leave way before they've did the moving truck and all the things. So you want to make sure that you're crystal clear with the communications, but that's the thing, is you can get a lot of information just talking to the listing agent on what is really important to the sellers. It could be, hey, we just want somebody that really loves the neighborhood. There's a lot of sellers that take great pride in their yard, the way they've kept up the property, and they're actually really concerned with who's going to buy it, because they're friends with the existing neighbors that they have right there, and they don't want to be the ones who sell to the butthole that buys the house.
It's so true.
And doesn't take care of the yard, and then they're going to drive by a year later and everything is disheveled and looks like crap, right? I mean, it's a real thing.
Yep. And they'll drive by later, so they'll know. They'll know what you did.
Yeah, they'll ask the neighbors if they don't drive by. So one thing you'll see a lot, and maybe a realtor will suggest this, is selling the home is an emotional thing like we were talking about. And so it's just, how do you position your offer in such a way where the seller at least knows a little bit about you? And so there's Dear John letters. These are very controversial in the real estate world. If you were to sit down and write a letter about all the things as to why you like the property and everything like that, and the reason why it's controversial is because it actually conflicts with a lot of fair housing law, because a lot of that language gets pulled in. But that being said, right, there still needs to be a way where you can give some kind of an idea to the seller about how much you like the property, how you see yourself living there, why it's a good fit. There still absolutely is that ability to pull on those emotional strings and actually do some sort of communication through your offer.
Yeah, again, this goes back to the communication with the listing agent, and what is it about the seller that they really care about? Are they like bottom line people? They don't want to be emotionally involved? Because I've had sellers like that where it's like, don't send me your letter. I don't want to know your story.
100%.
Because for me and my wife, we're all about
The dollar.
whatever that thing is. So then if you send them that thing and they didn't want it, it doesn't make them very happy.
It's tricky. So your buyer's agent has to really kind of feel out this, but it definitely is a strategy that deserves to be in our top 10. So when your agent is writing the contract, okay, for the house, there's a lot of things that can be cleaned up, that the boilerplate kind of contracts, they have longer timelines and things that can be really cinched up. So what we're talking about is making sure that the contract is written really clean and that you don't have any additional weird contingencies in there that don't need to be in there, because by default, a lot of the state agreements have this stuff. So an example would be in Washington State, we are given 10 days by default for the buyer to conduct the inspection and get the results back to the seller. That's way more time than is necessary. And so it's going through the agreement with the agent and making sure any of those timelines that can be moved up are moved up, and making sure any contingencies that are in there that you don't need per the contract are actually eliminated.
Yeah, what this does is it gives the seller peace of mind that if for some reason something happened and you changed your mind and they did have 2 or 3 or 4 people interested in the home, they only have a couple of days of limbo time, like in there where you've made this offer, but there's still some like, yes, and if this comes into alignment, it's gonna close, right? So it just tightens that up. It goes from 10 days to either 5 days or 7 days, depending on where the weekend falls in your 5-day process or whatever. But yes, it just makes the seller feel good that if something were to fall out, they could then go back to this other person, and most likely in that shortened period of time, they would still be interested.
Another good example of this is in Washington, we can do a full inspection, meaning that we can request repairs after the inspection has been done of the seller. There's also a way to write the agreement where we can make it to where we can do the inspection, but it's on a pass-fail basis. So meaning that now the seller's not concerned that we're going to send them a laundry list of, paint this little piece of trim over here and things that they're going to have to manage. So there's another opportunity there to do a pass-fail inspection in Washington State. You'd have to check on your state if you're in a different one, if that's the case. But I do know when the market gets really hot, a lot of buyers will actually waive their entire inspection. So they're never conducting one. And it's never something that we would recommend unless you're in that situation where you really love the house, you're really confident that it's okay. But because you're really taking away a lot of your rights to really fully understand the property. But if we have a scenario where the house was built just in the last few years, you know that it's in good shape, and you still get to do an inspection and you still get the list, it's just you basically waiving your right to ask for the smaller repairs that may come up. But if something's really bad, you're still able to back out.
So another thing to double check with your realtor on whomever you're working with is how do they present your offer when it comes time. We talk about communicating, which a lot of that has to do with on the phone or via email or whatever, but when you actually submit the paperwork, how does it look when it goes out? Does it have a cover letter? Is it set up in forms that are easy for the realtor to open and read and look at? How many times do we get just like a link from someone and no communication that they even sent something over? So we didn't know. It's like Saturday afternoon and you're like, whoa, what is this in my inbox? Like you have no clue. So do they communicate that the offer's coming? All of the things that make you look really professional and easy to work with. Because if you've got 2 or 3 offers in your hand as a seller, I would want to work with somebody that's very cooperative, very professional, that knows what the heck they're doing, that's not going to screw it up.
Yeah.
So show them how good you are at your job when you present the offer.
Yeah, and that's the thing is for consumers, if you're watching this, you have no idea how the realtor's going to do that. You expect that they're doing it professionally, but you don't always know. And so that communication and all those things, and I would just ask the questions of the real estate agent to make sure, hey, when this is submitted, how do you do it exactly? Is it emailed? Is it, just ask a few questions there, because I can tell you as a listing agent primarily, there's a lot of times where I get a link, I don't get a call from the other agent, and all of a sudden I've got this offer in my inbox. And there's been times where I went to spam, and unfortunately as a consumer, your offer, I never even got it, because there was no follow-up, there was no call, there was no text, and it went to my spam. All right, so number 10, and this is the most important one, I feel like, is don't ask for really ridiculous things in your offer. So if you are competing, if you love the house, and there are 5 other people that love the house, but you really have to have their couch or something in their property that's personal property, just don't ask for it. Just deal with that later. So try to win the negotiation, and then have your realtor come back and say, you know what, I really love that couch. Is there a way that you could leave that at the property and then I could pay you out of escrow for that couch? You don't know how many deals actually come across this way where somebody wants the TV or the patio furniture or something really weird. So that's number 10, don't ask for dumb things.
So these are 10 things that we use all the time when we're in competitive offer situations. Of course, there's more than 10 things, and every situation is different. So the 10 that we used here may not be the same 10 that we would use somewhere else, and it could be a mix and match of 25 things that we use, just depending on what's going on with your scenario. So talk to your lender about strategies that they would use to win the offer, and we can send you our top 20 if that's something that you're interested in knowing.
Be open to the price, be open to the escalation clause, be open to the appraisal gap. Those are the main ones, and then it's just come down to communication. So if you need to learn more, or if you want to learn more, get in contact with us. We can give you the rest of the list. If you're not at the point where you're writing offers, be sure to check out the channel and just learn a little bit more about what the buying process looks like.
And if there's other information that you're looking for in the buying or selling process, and if you're at all interested in looking for a home in the Olympia area, we have a ton of information on our channel. We have the buyer blueprint and the seller blueprint, so check out those videos as well.